We shrink our urban footprints and the use of infrastructure from 25% of the Earth's surface to 15% of the Earth's surface. So the mining industry is key in shrinking our human environmental footprint by 30%. The more senior roles you take and you're looking at the broader issues and trying to figure out how to present your company to the world, you start to get this feedback that mining companies aren't terribly well liked. From an investment point of view, our returns are inconsistent, but on a broader basis, the feedback from lots of stakeholders became quite tough. And I remember my time in Canada, in particular in Sudbury, going up to try and sort out the nickel, copper, precious metals operations, how Inco was really disliked. It also then made me much more aware of how much work we had to do to change a much broader concept of the whole mining industry. In virtually all the connections I've had, I try to get away from the shouting match and turn it into a conversation. The first thing that's really important is to try and understand where someone's coming from. If you can take the time and be prepared to take a few shots and not overreact, the thing that struck me is people aren't joining dots. Materials and the things we use in our daily life actually come from mines. They didn't understand that mining is probably the most important industry in the face of the planet in terms of environmental footprints. And so it struck me that they didn't understand the context in which we were operating, and we didn't understand how we were impacting on their lives on a daily basis. Because we do disrupt people's lives. We dig holes, we make noise, we create dust. So what can we do to minimize those impacts, but at the same time help them understand why our activities are so important, both on a broader basis and at a local level? And that takes time and it takes patience. If you just talk to the people that like you or people that work in your industry, you're going to get a very narrow perspective on your activities. And so it's stepping outside your comfort zone and connecting with those people that you interface with. They'll give you some pretty tough truths. In my experience, in our industry and most other industries, if you're the leader of a corporation, you have a responsibility to be a leader for the industry. I don't think all CEOs share that view. If the leaders of the major companies aren't leading those conversations, who do you think will? If you want to create a company that's successful for the long term, we have to demonstrate that that company is creating sustainable value for society as well as shareholders. And so that longer view is something that I think the industry has to take on more broadly. And if that occurs, then I think the industry will go from strength to strength. A better understanding of what we need to do to communicate to people at a much broader level. I think in many cases, we don't listen well. And I always make the point, we've got two ears and one mouth, and we should use them in that proportion. We tend to do it the other way around. So if in that conversation they shut up for most of the time and listen, there'd be a lot of very important lessons they'd learn, and they would have the opportunity to maybe explain a few points that aren't necessarily understood. In my experience, most issues that people have in local communities are relatively easy to deal with. We just sit down and talk to each other and work out how we can work together. There are so many things I think we can do. and develop, and I think it works both ways. One thing about Perth, its connection to the mining industry as Western Australia and its understanding of the Pilbara, the goldfields, the Murchison, the various communities across the state, the understanding of the relationship in the state to the mining industry is very constructive in the main. There have been challenging moments in those relationships, but you've generally tended to navigate through those for the betterment of everyone. And so I think Western Australia is one of those jurisdictions where mining is probably better understood. Mark Cutifani heading over to Perth for GRX26. Join us, be part of the fun, most importantly, be part of a conversation about your industry.